Welcome, troops, to my Last Jedi full plot prediction video. Now here I'm going to cover the entire story from start to finish, with as many theories as I could possibly put together realistically. Now keep in mind, not every character may be mentioned, and obviously not every single detail is going to be covered, but you know what? That's where all of you come in. So I hope you all will enjoy this and have some fun with it. Let's get started. So, first and foremost, how will this movie open? Well, we know that at the end of The Force Awakens, Rey finally confronts Luke on Ahch-To. However, I do not think the movie will open with this. Instead, after the crawl, I believe we will immediately be introduced to Snoke's new ship, the Supremacy, and then we'll see Hux's ship return with Kylo Ren. I think the shots of Kylo coming up the elevator and then slamming his helmet into the wall are at the very beginning. He may even put the black bandage over his scar, to hide it from Snoke, to hide his shame. And this is him angrily preparing to see Snoke and face his failure. So where is Kylo going? Well, we also remember that Snoke wants to complete his training, and that means he will confront a very upset Snoke and then prepare to fight the guards. In this shot here, we see Kylo Ren's perspective as he enters while Hux turns back and glares at him. Then, we will without a doubt get one of the best fight scenes in the entire film, Kylo facing off against the Praetorian Guards. Now we saw at least 8 in the previous picture, and we have seen behind the scenes footage of Adam Driver fighting at least 2 guys at once, so my guess is that this will be a quick, intense fight with Snoke watching over the battle, again calling back to Palpatine and Plagueis, and Kylo will of course win this fight and prove his worth as a warrior. However, he's not quite done proving his worth to Snoke just yet. He still has to kill Leia. He's proven himself with the murder of his father, but can he silence his mother as well? This is the real final test, and Kylo hopes to accomplish this at the evacuation of Dakar. One last clue we learned at the end of The Force Awakens is that the First Order had discovered the location of the Resistance planet, Dakar, which means that beginning immediately, the Resistance must evacuate this planet and head straight for Crate. What will follow is the actual Battle of Dakar, which will most likely begin with an introduction to Poe and Leia discussing battle tactics, and soon after this, Admiral Holdo will appear with her entourage, we'll see a reunion of friends, and then Holdo will lend her assistance with her very own battle fleet. And no doubt soon after, the battle will begin, when the First Order along with Kylo Ren and his TIE Silencer arrive. This battle is the space battle that we've been seeing all throughout the trailers, with Poe flying his X-Wing bombing First Order ships and protecting all of the transports. This is also where Kylo Ren will face his final test. Can he destroy Leia right here and now? Does he have it in him to fire the missiles? And as I've said before, no, he definitely does not do it right here, especially if this is the very beginning of the film. Instead, this scene is meant to showcase that Kylo is still really struggling with his decisions. He's still unclear of how to act because the pull to the light is far too strong. Just as a quick side note, something I really hope we get to see through this entire sequence is Kylo and Poe dogfighting. I mean, we've got both guys in the same location flying these awesome ships. Let's see some World War II style air battles. Now, in case any of you guys are wondering, no, I haven't forgot about Finn waking up, but I think he might actually wake up after the evacuation is over. I think it would be a great dynamic if Poe not only had to save the Resistance, but his friend who's still sleeping and injured as well. Then after the battle is over, you can have some great Finn-Poe banter that's like, hey buddy, you missed the battle. And finally, after this, we will get the completion of our long-awaited cliffhanger. What happens after Rey confronts Luke? Well, we know now from the trailers that Rey hands Luke the saber, and we see him take it into his mechanical hand, and he asks Rey, "Who are you?" Now before she starts explaining everything, I believe there will be a moment right away where he tells her to leave. You know, I don't want you here. You don't want to be involved with me. I'm in a different place right now, and I failed. Go away. And I think that this will lead Rey to not wanting to give up on Luke. So what she'll do is she'll start to follow him around the island to all his different locations, trying to persuade him. But eventually she'll find that he can't be persuaded. He has to come to terms with this himself. Now when he does finally come to terms with everything, this is when we'll see that shot of him inside the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon remembering the past. And finally bringing himself around to talking to Rey. Because even just talking to her is going to be hard for him. And why? Well, obviously because of the possible implications it would have. When Luke finally speaks to Rey, this will most likely mean that he has accepted whatever the Force has brought into his life. And he will explain this to Rey, how he has a new definition of Force knowledge. He doesn't practice the Jedi ways anymore. And he will once again inquire about Rey's presence. Who are you? Why are you here? What do you want from me? This is when we will hear Rey explain to Luke that something inside of her has always been there, but now it's awake, and now she needs help. She needs guidance. She needs someone to show her her place. But Luke is naturally defensive to this. Why do you want me? I failed the Jedi Order. I can't do it. I don't have it in me anymore. However, Luke's final revelation will be when Rey tells him that Han Solo has died, killed by your apprentice. And not only that, but the entire Republic has been completely wiped out. And it's at this point, when Luke comes to the sudden realization that he has caused far more harm to the galaxy in his absence, allowing the First Order to kill everything that was once important to him. And this moment is what will finally push Luke to want to come back, to make his long-awaited return to the world and to the Resistance. But before he does that, he needs a new apprentice. Soon after this sequence, we'll finally join up with the Resistance on Crait. Now, Crait was actually originally discovered by the Rebellion, and it's an old mining planet, and now the new hideout. I believe our initial introduction to this planet will be through the Resistance themselves. Leia and Holdo will continue to discuss plans and rally the troops, and Poe will be making sure everything is okay with the rest of his pilots, while also keeping an eye on Holdo. Also, this is where Finn will finally wake up to some welcome friends, and will be introduced to Rose, who will most likely have her own reunion with her sister Paige, where they will discuss current politics. Speaking of politics, something else we'll begin to see is Leia actually returning to her role as a royal senator and representative. Something that a lot of people didn't really care for in the prequels were all of the politics, but you know what? I actually really enjoyed them. I'm interested to see what state is the New Republic in, what is being done about it. And I'm also very interested to see if Snoke himself or a representative from the First Order has a seat in the Senate, and how they respond, because keep in mind, Snoke and the First Order may have many supporters and allies. Now, around this point, I think we'll continue to spend a considerable amount of time on Ahch-To. Luke will finally begin to see what Rey is made of. This is where we'll see those shots of Luke and Rey on the cliffside, and her trying to split the rock with her staff first, and then finally the saber. And then Luke asking her what she sees as she reaches out with the Force. I also think we'll spend a lot of time diving deep into Force mythology, the complex of the Chosen One, balance, why Luke is not a Jedi and is now likely a gray Jedi, and why he's drawing power from both dark and light. Now, after Rey's raw display of power, which I believe she does by meditating and not by splitting the rock with her saber, Luke will immediately recoil and tell us about this strength that he has seen before and how much it scares him. I believe this act will not only confuse Rey, but make her very angry to the point where she possibly lashes out at Luke. And if you had asked me why Rey is hanging off a cliff here, I think that is two different shots spliced together, because I think that she's climbing up the cliff as part of her training. At this point, we'll probably cut back to Snoke's supremacy, or maybe even Hux's ship, where we'll most likely see Snoke appear as the Emperor did, informing General Hux that they must locate the new Resistance base. And don't worry guys, I haven't forgot about Captain Phasma. I actually think that Phasma won't be introduced in the movie until around this point, and I think that Hux will most likely utilize her as almost a Boba Fett type character, looking for not only the Resistance base, but Finn as well. We might even see Captain Phasma's personal ship. Speaking of Finn and the Resistance, we'll soon cut back to Crate, where we'll continue to see the relationships between Leia, Poe, and Admiral Holdo grow. As dynamics change, I'm guessing we'll see Holdo and Poe begin to clash, as Holdo learned everything from Leia and feels she has more experience and more of a voice, which will cause Poe to feel as though he's slipping into the background. This is also where we'll see Finn and Rose continue to grow their friendship, Finn in recovery and Rose as the best tech that the Resistance has to offer. And they will discuss the current situation and also Finn's new technology. That's right, I think that this biohexacrypt that everyone has been discussing has something to do with technology that has been implanted into Finn, possibly something that Rose even works on herself through his back. Now the question is, what is it? Nobody has been able to give a definitive answer, but maybe some enhancement to his spine and the muscles around his spine. Soon after this, we'll come back to Ahch-To once again for another long stretch of training, but this time Luke has gone off by himself, and this is where we'll see that shot of Rey walking up the hillside in the fog to the inside of the tree. As she slowly walks inside, she will come across Luke running his hand over the old Jedi books, connecting with the past, and then Rey will begin to ask him questions about this past. What happened to you? Why are you here? What's going on? And now, at long last, we'll get the flashback sequences that we see in the trailer. We'll see the full story of the burning of the Jedi Temple, all while he regales Rey with as many details about the past as he can. After this vision is when we'll see a confused Rey watching Luke as he leaves. Rey defends the Jedi one more time, urging him to rekindle the Order. But instead, he just simply states, "I only know one truth. It's time for the Jedi to end." Now, at this point, I think it would be incredibly interesting if Rey had her Force vision here. A lot of us have been speculating that scenes like Kylo Ren offering his hand is really a part of a Force vision to try and test and tempt Rey. And this is a perfect moment for it to happen. And no, I do not think she takes his hand. I think most likely the memory of Han Solo combined with her strong will save her. Meanwhile, back to the Captain Phasma storyline, hopefully if my previous theory was correct, we'll see Phasma utilize some of her skills to acquire information, maybe even kill a few people, which will lead her to the details she needs to begin to search for Crate. Cutting back to the Resistance base, at some point Leia and Holdo will most likely begin working on locating Snoke's supremacy, and the reason to do this is that the Resistance and the New Republic need to take this opportunity to strike back. Snoke is using the chaos of the galaxy to overtake it, so this is the only way the New Republic and the Resistance can gain any sort of control back. And here is where Finn and Rose come in. Finn will be eager, of course, to get out on a mission again as a real member of the Resistance, and my guess is that Rose is an extremely gifted technician that has a skill they need to possibly blow the ship up from the inside, in classic Star Wars fashion. However, they need help from a familiar friend first. In order to pull off this job, they will need a slicer, and this man's name is DJ. And only one person knows how to get there. Maz Kanata. So Finn, Rose, and likely BB-8 will head off once again to Takodana, or possibly a brand new location if Maz is on the run, then attain this vital information which will lead them to Canto Bight. Meanwhile, when we cut back to Kylo Ren, he will be locked away meditating. He might even have some secret Force connection with Rey, and he attempts to communicate with her, to locate her presence, and eventually Luke. And yet, Kylo cannot help but feeling like a child, locked in his room for failing to complete another task, and this will allow for a lot of emotional character development. Now, we'll cut back to Phasma once again, still on the hunt for this information. And of course, she will eventually find this information, possibly from a secret contact or even someone from the Black Sun, and soon discover the hidden Resistance base is located on Crate. With this new power, she heads back to the Supremacy so the preparations can get underway immediately. Meanwhile, Finn and Rose will arrive on Canto Bight. And for this specific sequence, I believe that we will absorb the environment for quite a while because it's brand new and we've never seen it before, and also because Maz might have informed them of another contact that frequents the casinos. Now my guess is that someone in the casino is a double agent, or they might just recognize Finn, because we did learn from The Force Awakens that spies are everywhere. And this, of course, will lead to our very first chase sequence of the movie. As security arrives to take them away, Finn knows that they can't be caught, so he and Rose run for whatever is closest, which just happens to be a Falthier, better known as the Space Horses. Now I think that security will chase them for a while, but eventually they will be caught and thrown into jail. After this, we'll leave Canto Bight for a while and return to Kylo Ren meditating. Suddenly, he makes a connection. He has located Rey through the Force. She is on Ahch-To with Luke Skywalker. He rushes to inform Snoke immediately, and in one move, not only redeems himself again, but is immediately tasked with a new assignment. Take the Knights of Ren and capture them. Now, of course, one of the biggest mysteries is who are the Knights of Ren? Well, I believe them to be a mixture of the remnants of the Acolytes of the Beyond and also ex-students from Luke's Jedi Temple. My guess is that they spend most of their time just like Kylo Ren, either locked away in rooms meditating with Sith relics, or hunting and completing tasks. So, I think we'll get an epic scene of Kylo gathering up his troop and then heading off in his command shuttle to Ahch-To. Around this point, we'll head back to Canto Bight, where we'll rejoin Finn and Rose in prison. After some brief dialogue, they will eventually find out that DJ is actually in the same prison that they are, and my guess is that Rose, being an extremely gifted technician, will actually assist them in finding a way to break out. However, I do not think that their breakout will go unnoticed. I believe that they will absolutely draw attention, which will lead to a very Episode 4 style shootout while trying to rescue someone at the same time. So DJ joins the group, joins the shootout, and this leads to our next chase scene where the group hijacks a speeder and are chased once again through the city streets. Lots of crashes, exchanged gunfire, but eventually they do escape this time and probably end up where DJ is keeping a ship stored. So, they escape the planet in DJ's prequel-era style ship and begin to inform him of what exactly is going on. At first, I have no doubts he will be a little hesitant to do anything, but as we start to build his character, I think something will change his mind. It might even be the death of Han Solo, because I can totally see DJ being an old friend of Han's. But first, they need some First Order uniforms and a First Order ship, and of course, DJ knows just where to find those. Now, because DJ is a code name, I also have a brand new theory that was provided by one of my awesome subs, Axel, who actually thinks that Benicio del Toro is playing the role of Kes Dameron, Poe's father, which does work. This could work, it does make a lot of sense, and it would also add an extremely interesting dynamic to the entire story. But for right now, I'll leave that up to you guys to speculate. After this, we will finally return to the Supremacy. Phasma informs Hux of the new location. The Resistance base is on Crate. Hux commends Phasma for her duty, and then immediately informs Snoke. Snoke, who is looking to crush everything in one go, informs Hux to send a massive amount of forces to Crate, including AT-M6s, TIE fighters, and the new Dreadnought-class Star Destroyer. Around this time, we'll return to Ahch-To. And when we last left, Rey had just had her vision at the Force Tree. However, unlike Luke, she passed the test, and Luke knows this. Now, we will begin to see Luke warming up to Rey instead, realizing that she might indeed be a worthy apprentice after all. This is when he will reveal all of the final truths to her about how he feels, and also I think that he will reveal to everyone that he has taken the Barish vow, which is an oath taken by a Jedi that has completely refrained from all activities related to the Jedi Order. Instead, they learn and live by only the Force alone, a force that consists of both light and dark. And guess what, everyone? He practices both sides now. So now, Rey and Luke will begin training once again, but not for long, because Kylo Ren and the Knights of Ren have located Ahch-To, and before things can finish, he and the Knights will pay a visit. I think that Rey will be away from Luke when this happens, and it will be raining while she runs to his safety. Rey finally reaches Luke by diving into the water and then up on another side of the island where she finds him hiding. But before long, Kylo and the Knights of Ren approach, and this is where she lights up her saber, ready to fight. And then we will get one of the most amazing fight scenes in Star Wars history, where we'll finally see Luke and Rey both go up against the Knights of Ren. Now this battle will last for a little while, but eventually Rey will branch off so she can face Kylo Ren alone for round 2. Now, many people had thought for a long while that this shot here was actually Luke looking up at Rey, who is for some reason igniting her saber and looking down at him, but I don't think that's the case at all. I think that this shot here of Luke on the ground is after he has battled and killed a few Knights of Ren, but has been overpowered for a moment. Then, Kylo Ren approaches him, shares some dialogue, and this is when we get the line, "This is not going to go the way you think." Because, at least I think, that Luke has one more trick left up his sleeve, and most likely it's a Force trick that he learned while studying, and somehow, some way, he vanishes. Regardless of the specifics though, Rey will lose this next fight to Kylo Ren, because we then know that Rey is captured and once again hauled off in a ship to finally be presented to Snoke. Now, I know what all of you are saying at this point. Dude, where's Chewie? What about Chewie? Well, I haven't forgot about him, but I actually think while all this is happening, Chewie will have gone off to get the Falcon, probably hoping to rescue people before it's too late, but unfortunately, it was just a tad too late. Now, what will happen then is that he actually eventually locates Luke, gets him on board the Falcon and to safety, and this is how Luke gets back to Crate. After this, we'll cut back to Rose, Finn, and DJ making a pit stop most likely at some First Order facility so that they can steal a First Order ship and some First Order uniforms before heading back to Snoke's ship. And now, finally, we get to the section of the film that everyone has been waiting for, Rey being brought before Snoke. So this is when we see that shot of Rey staring at something with Kylo Ren in the background, and I actually think that the very first thing that Snoke will say to her is, "Darkness rises with light to meet it." It will confuse and intrigue Rey. And then, Snoke will begin to summarize the entire situation. Now we have to keep in mind that it has been made clear a few times before that we won't delve too much into Snoke's backstory, simply because it isn't necessary to this film. However, I do believe that we will learn that he was once an advisor to Luke, perhaps a member of the Church of the Force or a member of the New Jedi Council, who found and stole Rey, hiding her on Jakku. This is where we get the lines, "When I found you, I saw raw, untamed power." And beyond that, something truly special. Suddenly, Rey slowly begins to understand her past, but one final clue remains, and Snoke is surprised she hasn't figured it out yet. I'm guessing that the scene might go something like this. Snoke will say, "You mean your father hasn't told you yet?" And Rey will say, "My father?" And Snoke will then at long last inform her, "Yes, your father is Luke Skywalker." Now this is actually a perfect time for this reveal, because she is separated from Luke and cannot talk to him, so what will happen is she'll begin to think very poorly of him. So after this huge reveal, we will then cut back to DJ, Rose, Finn, and BB-8, who are now making their approach to Snoke's ship. No doubt they'll pull a Return of the Jedi, and DJ will do something very fancy with the code clearance, utilizing his slicer skills, and get themselves on board. Now I think this shot here is of Finn with Rose and DJ in the background, and most likely they're on their way to the reactor. Now at this point I think we'll continue to spend a lot of time on board this ship, because I think we'll have one sequence when the group comes upon a public execution, obviously a display of power by the First Order, but it will shock Finn once again. I also think that this is the point where Tom Hardy's character will recognize Finn and things will start to get crazy as he begins to follow them. Then, cut back to Crate, and this is where Luke and Chewie will show up, much to the surprise of not just Leia, but the entire Resistance. We will at long last get our reunion between brother and sister, which will no doubt be incredibly written. After this, we'll cut back to Snoke, Kylo, and Rey in the throne room. Snoke will continue to explain to both Kylo and Rey why they have been chosen. One is light and one is dark to act out the Force's will. But of course, Rey, being naturally resistant to all these things, will not obey, and might even try to attack Snoke. And this is where we'll finally see Snoke's Force powers. Kylo will attempt to stop her, but even though Snoke is weak and frail, it doesn't mean he's not incredibly powerful with the Force, and so he begins to torture Rey. Now here is where things get really interesting, because as all this is going on, our crew works their way down to the reactor, and there they finally get caught, which of course leads to another spastic shootout, with Finn and DJ ultimately protecting Rose, I think, as she is the only one that might be able to break, dismantle, or self-destruct the engine. We might even see DJ and Rose working together, combining their skills. And then, soon, the reactor finally begins to die and break apart. However, before long, Captain Phasma and her executioner troops come walking through the door, presenting a brand new threat and preventing their only possible escape. But not before Finn has anything to say about it. He grabs a baton and tells DJ and Rose to run for a ship, while he clashes with Phasma. Back in the throne room, everyone feels the shudders and the shaking, and soon Hux runs in to inform them they are at risk of perishing. This immediately stops Snoke's torture of Rey, as he orders Hux to get him off this ship and to a safe location. Snoke then flees while informing Hux to finish the resistance on Crate, and this time he takes Rey with him. Also, I think during this time, for a bit of comic relief, we'll have BB-8 and the BB-9E droid interacting and probably even attacking each other. Meanwhile, the battle between Phasma and Finn rages on. Now I think we'll get a solid 2 minutes at least of some really entertaining choreography, but it will ultimately end when Finn gains the upper hand at some point, and Phasma once again mysteriously disappears. He then runs off to rejoin DJ and Rose. Now, as for the supremacy itself, I'm not sure that it will be completely destroyed, only severely compromised, which is why Snoke played it safe and fled. I just simply think that the ship is too grand to be destroyed in one movie. So now, with everyone heading back to Crate, the actual Battle of Crate will finally begin. Having already located the planet, we'll see the new First Order Dreadnought-class destroyer deploying walkers and TIE fighters down to the surface. And it's at this point, I believe Luke will make a very rousing and inspiring speech to the entire Resistance, about how he was wrong to leave, but has learned much in his exile. Most of all, his place, which is with the rest of the rebels. He also informs them that he will be flying with them. Now, it's time for everyone to join another battle. But, before long, the conversation shifts to Rey and Luke. What happened? Why is only he here? They soon figure out that Rey has been captured and taken aboard Snoke's ship, the same ship that Finn, Rose, and DJ blew up. Sadness and fear begin to overtake them, but soon they are informed that the ship was not lost, which must mean that Snoke has survived and Rey is captured once again. And so, the sadness and fear soon turn into resolve, as the First Order walkers slowly begin coming across the salt plains. Poe, Rose, Finn, and the rest of the Resistance pilots pile into their ski speeders. After this, we'll get some more time with Luke and Leia. Much more emotional and meaningful dialogue and much needed heart-to-heart time. But ultimately, Leia will tell Luke to leave her behind. And why? Because her son is coming, and she must face him alone. This is where we get those shots of her standing alone in the hangar bay as the doors shut. At this point, we'll cut back to the walkers and the TIE fighters all making their way closer and closer to the base. The Resistance speeders race towards them at full speed, stabilizers down, kicking up the red sand. And then, the actual Battle of Crait will officially begin. So obviously I'm not going to get into every single detail of the battle, but we do know that it will be very chaotic, with Poe even eventually crash landing and having to slide into a trench to stay safe. And who knows what will happen to Finn and Rose. Now, we know that the Millennium Falcon is also going to be a part of this battle, so we'll get that awesome shot of the TIEs chasing it through the red crystals and then it blasting through the surface to join the rest of the troops. So since the Millennium Falcon is going to be an official part of this battle, one thing that I'm really hoping to see is that Luke will be flying in the Millennium Falcon right next to Chewie. Because think about it, with Rey gone, he needs a co-pilot. Or we might even see Luke back in the gunner's chair once again, taking down some TIEs, which would just make my entire life. But either way, Finn sure looks excited to see them, and you know the Falcon is going to do some damage. However, even with the heart and the resolve of the Resistance, the First Order is simply too powerful to be stopped. Sometimes you can't hold the tide with a broom. And I think that this shot here is after the First Order has won the battle, but Kylo Ren, who has arrived in the background, has ordered them to stop. And why? Because he has sensed his mother's presence ever since he left Snoke, and he knows what he must do. Confront her face to face and end her just like his father. His final test. So my guess is that Kylo and Leia will be mostly alone at this point. She has obviously willingly given herself up to face her son, and Poe, Finn, and Rose are probably all still out on the battlefield. As for Luke, I'm guessing that Leia told him to run, while she stays behind. Because if the First Order has taken over Crait, that means that Luke is on the run again, and will probably go to rescue Rey. So this will give us a very emotional scene with Leia and her son. Kylo strides in with his troops and we'll get that beautiful overhead shot, and then finally, he confronts her, as she tries once more, just like Han, to persuade him back to the light. Now, a lot of people have been speculating how exactly Leia will be written out of the script, but the best theory I have heard yet was one from Mr. Pixel PTLK, who suggested that Leia will actually sacrifice herself for Kylo Ren. My guess is she might even pull a Ben Kenobi, allowing Kylo to strike her down, and in doing so, she transforms into the Force. Not only does this make her very powerful, but now his mother's voice can start to speak to him instead of Vader's, and that will either drive him insane or push him towards the light. So at this point, I think a lot of people will expect Luke to come out. And you know what? I think they're right. It won't be until this point, almost the very end of the film, where we finally see Luke versus Kylo Ren. Now Leia told him to run, but not before he faces his apprentice one more time. Much to the excitement of fans, Luke will finally ignite his green lightsaber and we'll see a short but sweet fight between them. Kylo obviously can't last long against Luke, but Luke won't kill him. I don't even think he'll injure him. I believe he'll do some kind of Force magic to simply disable him in some way. And before Luke officially leaves this time, he assures Kylo Ren he will find Rey. And when he does, it will be the end for him and the First Order. Now, after this will come the actual wrapping up of the film. I'm not exactly sure how it will end, but I suspect that we might have a couple of big reveals at the end of the film. One being DJ's true identity. He might just be Kes Dameron, which I already mentioned, and if that's so, they could keep him around till episode 9. Also, Lieutenant Connix. she just might be revealed as Leia's secret daughter, which would create the Jacen and Jaina Solo storyline for Episode 9. So at this point I'm going to wrap up the video, because after this it's just specifics. So thank you guys so much for joining me for my full plot analysis. Now of course I turn this conversation over to all of you. What do you guys think about all of these plot points? Is there anything that I left out? Anything that you guys want to add? Please feel free to leave all of your thoughts and opinions down below in the Great White Void. And as always, until next we meet, I'll see you guys at The Last Jedi premiere.